Michael Carter stares at a returned gift box, his daughter Sophie's graduation gift unopened. Untouched. The box sits on the hallway table, still wrapped in navy paper and silver ribbon, as if refusing to acknowledge it had ever left the house. He doesn't touch it, just looks. Its pristine surface is somehow more wounding than if it had been ripped apart and tossed aside. From the living room, the soft creak of an old floorboard signals Elaine's quiet pacing. She knows better than to speak first. Through the window, Michael can see the glow from the Carmichael's backyard. A party is still going strong across the street. Balloons, laughter, the tintinnabulation of cutlery against plates. He saw the photos earlier. Sophie smiling between Rachel and a school counselor. Diploma held proudly. 100 likes in an hour. No mention of him, not even a tag. The family portrait still hangs on the wall. Slightly crooked, the frame cracked on one corner. It's the same crack from the night Rachel told him, calmly and devastatingly, that it was over. She hadn't raised her voice. Not once. She simply asked for what she wanted: freedom, custody, the house, the narrative. Lily enters quietly, her hair still damp from the garden. She stops when she sees him still staring. She's 18, she says gently. She's figuring things out. Michael nods but says nothing. His fingers twitch at his side. Elaine clears her throat behind him. I found something. In the attic. She holds out a sealed envelope. Her handwriting is sharp on the front. Rachel 2020. He doesn't reach for it. Why now? She gave it to me to hold. Elaine says. Said she might want it back. Said not to read it unless she didn't fix things. Lily leans slightly forward. You don't have to. But Michael has already taken it. He holds it in both hands like it might break open and bleed. The flap isn't glued shut. He opens it slowly, slides out a folded sheet of paper. Her handwriting slants to the left. He reads, I don't know if I'm writing this to confess or to cleanse. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe I just need to put it down somewhere that isn't my spine. Where it's been aching since I told you. He stops, looks at the fireplace, then away. You were never cruel to me. Michael, that was the worst part. I needed you to be cruel. To justify the way I was already looking elsewhere. I needed you to fail, so I could say I had no choice. His throat tightens. He swallows hard. But you didn't fail. You were kind, steady, and I hated that, because it made me the villain of my own life. He folds the letter halfway. Lily stands close now, not touching him, but her presence grounds the air. I think I'm afraid Sophie will find out. And I think I'm more afraid she never will. And I'll die a coward. Michael closes the letter completely. For a moment, silence returns to the house like dust settling after a storm. Elaine moves to the door. She turns slightly before stepping out. Sophie should read it, when she's ready. Sophie, searching for an old sketchbook, stumbles upon a folded, tear-stained letter inside her mother's locked drawer. She wasn't snooping, at least. That's what she tells herself. The drawer had been slightly ajar. The key left dangling from the lock. Careless in a way Rachel never was. Sophie had only been looking for her old sketchbook. The one with the soft leather cover and frayed corners. Something to distract herself during a long summer afternoon that smelled of lemon cleaner and something quietly rotting beneath the surface. The letter was folded in thirds. The edges curled with age. The ink had smudged in places, blurring the words like secrets trying to escape their bindings. Her name wasn't on it. Not directly, but the first line stopped her breath. Michael, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe it's better if you don't. But I need to say it anyway, somewhere. To someone, even if it's only paper. Her stomach tightened. She was still standing in the doorway of her mother's bedroom, fingers trembling slightly. The letter held away from her like it might bite. Outside, she could hear the sprinkler ticking. A low rhythmic hiss against the glass. Somewhere down the hall, Maddie's music thudded faintly beneath closed doors. Sophie read more. I didn't leave because he hurt me. I left because I was already gone long before I packed the boxes. Because being loved by someone who never failed me felt like a prison I built for myself. The words blurred again, not from the ink. This time, from something welling up behind her eyes. Hot and disorienting. She didn't hear Maddie until the door creaked open wider. Sophie looked up sharply, startled. Maddie leaned against the frame, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. She saw the paper, saw the look on Sophie's face, and didn't flinch. You're just starting to see her. Maddie said softly. The statement hung in the air like smoke. Sophie opened her mouth to ask, "What do you mean?" But Maddie had already turned. Footsteps silent as she disappeared down the hall. Sophie folded the letter, hands stiff, tucked it back where she found it. Or close enough. Her fingers lingered on the edge of the drawer before she pushed it closed. The soft click louder than it should have been. In the kitchen, Rachel was humming to herself, chopping parsley, the scent of garlic and something baking wafting down the hallway. She called out, "Girls, dinner in 10. Sophie didn't answer. She walked to her room, closed the door, locked it. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she sat on the floor beside her bed, knees pulled to her chest. The sketchbook long forgotten. The words played on a loop behind her eyes. Already gone. A prison I built for myself. Being loved by someone who never failed me. Dinner came and went. She didn't go downstairs. Rachel didn't knock. The phone buzzed beside her. Voicemail. Elaine's voice, calm but edged with urgency. Come visit me tomorrow. I need to show you something. It's time. Sophie listens to a recording in Elaine's living room, hearing her mother's voice say, I know I ruined him, but I couldn't bear to lose them. The words slipped through the old cassette player like a ghost breathing through time. Elaine sat across from her in a cushioned chair, spine straight despite the softness of her age. The lace doily beneath the player trembled slightly from the vibration of the speaker. Though the volume was barely above a whisper, Sophie leaned forward, elbows on her knees, breath caught halfway in her throat. Rachel's voice filled the room, calmer, younger, edged with something raw. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was tired of the sameness, the quiet. Michael always thought that meant peace. But to me, it was like drowning with my eyes open. Sophie stared at the cassette, as if looking hard enough might make it rewind the last decade and rearrange her memories. The carpet beneath her bare feet itched. A fly buzzed somewhere near the window, knocking dully against the screen. Elaine didn't speak. The recording crackled, then continued. When I told him, I expected rage, screaming, a slammed door, something I could use to say, see, he's the problem, but he just stood there. Just asked me what I wanted. Rachel's voice wavered. I told him I wanted the kids. That they needed me. That if he loved them, really loved them, he'd leave quietly, so they wouldn't hate me. There was silence. Not in the room. Sophie could hear the hum of the fridge, the distant rattle of wind chimes outside, but inside her own head, something vast and echoing had opened. Rachel again, softer now. He agreed, just like that, said if it spared us pain, he'd go. Elaine reached for the player and paused the tape. Sophie didn't move. You kept this? She asked. Voice small. Elaine nodded. She asked me to destroy it. I didn't. Why? Because truth doesn't rot. Sophie, it waits. Sophie turned to her, eyes wide, blinking. You knew? Elaine's face didn't flinch. We all kept quiet. Maybe too quiet. Sophie stood abruptly. The chair creaked behind her, and her shadow shifted across the carpet. She paced, then stopped in front of the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself. He let us hate him, she said, not to Elaine, not even really to herself, just to the room. He let us believe he left because he didn't care. The cassette clicked softly in the silence. Elaine rose and walked to the side table, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small case. She slipped the tape inside, closed it, and handed it to Sophie. Do what your heart says. But do it soon. Michael sets out a homemade cake, Happy 12th. Noah, in shaky icing, then sits down alone, waiting. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and burnt edges. The storm had rolled in late, thudding softly against the windows like fingers tapping to be let in. Lightning flickered now and then, briefly illuminating the modest space. The table set for two, the single candle already melting in its place, and the cake, slightly lopsided, with blue icing that bled at the curves of each letter. Michael sat in the chair closest to the window, one arm resting across his stomach, the other tracing the rim of his mug. The coffee had gone cold. Time had gone slow. He looked at the clock. 7:12 p.m. Every year, he made the same cake. Buttercream frosting, 2 layers, sprinkles around the edge because Noah once said it looked like confetti for my mouth. The last time Noah had eaten it here, he'd been 10. Then came the divorce, the distance, and the quiet skipping of birthdays. The door creaked, but it was only Lily. She entered without sound, barefoot, a paperback tucked under one arm. She looked at the cake. Then at Michael. He still might come, she said, not out of hope, but habit. Michael didn't answer. She moved closer, brushing a few crumbs off the counter. You've done enough. Let them come to you now. Michael smiled faintly. That's what I've been doing. Lily rested her hand on his shoulder. Brief but warm. No, she said gently. What you've been doing is waiting. That's different. He didn't respond, just watched the storm shift in color. The sky bleeding darker with each minute. The phone rang. Michael didn't move, so Lily answered. It's Elaine, she said, handing it to him. Michael pressed the phone to his ear. She's asking questions, Elaine said without preamble. Sophie, about you, about the past. Michael's grip tightened slightly. Did you tell her? I let her listen, Elaine said. That's enough for now. Just, be ready. Michael nodded slowly and hung up. Later, he climbed the stairs. The house groaned beneath him, old wood. Familiar patterns. He stepped into the room that hadn't changed much. No posters still on the walls. The small bookshelf. The model airplane frozen mid-flight from the ceiling. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled a folded sheet of paper from his back pocket. The words were simple. I'm here. No expectations. No questions. When you're ready, my door is open. He placed it on the pillow, smoothing it once. Back in the kitchen, Lily had blown out the candle. The flame left a thin ribbon of smoke that curled into the air. Then, a knock. Soft, hesitant. Michael turned. His feet moved before his thoughts caught up. The handle felt cold in his hand. He opened the door. Noah stood there, soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, shoes muddy, shoulders hunched, silent. So was Michael. At Thanksgiving dinner, Sophie stares at her mother. Then calmly says, we need to talk, right now. The clink of cutlery paused midair. Turkey steam still curled from the center of the table, mingling with the scent of rosemary and baked apples. Rachel's carving knife hovered an inch above the roast. Her smile frozen. Maddie looked up from her plate. Noah blinked, caught mid-bite. Elaine folded her napkin with a precision that betrayed anticipation more than confusion. Rachel recovered first. Sweetheart, can it wait? It's Thanksgiving. No, Sophie said, her voice low but firm. It really can't. She reached into her bag and placed two objects on the table, the folded letter and a small black cassette case. Rachel's hands trembled slightly, but she kept them on the knife and fork. Where did you? Your drawer, Sophie said, and Grandma's player. The room held its breath. Sophie stood, her fingers brushing the edge of the table as if grounding herself. I know everything now. Why Dad left, what he protected us from, what you let us believe. Maddie pushed her chair back. Slowly. I always thought something was off. I'd ask you why he didn't fight. Why he just disappeared. You never answered. Rachel's lips parted, but no words came. Noah's fork clattered to his plate. I hated him, Sophie said, quieter now. I thought he abandoned us. But he didn't. You did. Elaine placed the player in front of Sophie. She pressed play. Rachel's voice, young, emotional, unfiltered, filled the room. I ruined him, but I couldn't bear to lose them. Everyone froze. Rachel closed her eyes. I was scared, she whispered. No one moved for a moment. The audio played on, Rachel's past voice bleeding confessions into the silence. When it ended, no one reached to rewind. Noah stood up, the scrape of his chair loud in the stillness. His expression wasn't anger, it was something deeper. Confusion, grief, maybe something finally breaking open. I want to see Dad, he said, and walked out. Noah stands on Michael's porch, drenched, clutching a backpack and a drawing of their family from 5 years ago. The porch light flickered once in the drizzle, the kind of November rain that didn't pour so much as it whispered down. Steady and quiet, Michael had just set a kettle to boil when he saw the silhouette through the frosted glass. Not a knock, just a presence. When he opened the door, he didn't speak. His eyes moved from the soaked backpack to the trembling drawing Noah clutched. A child's colored pencil sketch. Warped at the edges. Michael, Rachel, Maddie, Sophie, Noah, everyone smiling. A sun in the corner. No clouds. Michael didn't say anything. He just stepped aside. Noah walked in. Lily, who had been upstairs reading, came down halfway before pausing on the steps. She caught Michael's eye. He gave a barely perceptible nod. She turned and gave them space. Michael handed Noah a towel, thick and warm from the dryer, then pointed to the kitchen. Noah followed. The table had 2 mismatched mugs, a plate of butter cookies, and leftover stew warming on the stove. Michael ladled a bowl without asking, placed it gently in front of Noah, then sat across from him. Noah ate slowly, spoon scraping the ceramic. One bite, then another. No words. When he finished, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He slid it across the table. Michael read it in a glance. 4 words. I heard the tape. His grip on the note tightened. Across the room, Lily had returned, leaning against the counter. She said nothing, but her eyes moved to Michael's hands, white-knuckled, gripping paper that threatened to tear. Still, he didn't cry. Noah looked up. I think I hated the wrong parent, he whispered. Michael didn't speak, but he stood, moved around the table, and placed a hand gently on Noah's shoulder. It was enough. It had to be. The kettle hissed, ready but ignored. Michael's phone buzzed on the counter. Maddie's name lit up the screen. He answered. Can I come over? She asked. Maddie flips through her journal, stopping at an entry titled, "The Night Mom Lied to My Face." The edges of the pages were frayed, some dotted with the faded bleed of tears. Her handwriting had changed over the years, from blocky, indignant scrawls to smaller, more careful loops, but this entry was unmistakably raw. Just 2 years ago, penned on a night she'd spent curled on her bed, headphones on, pretending not to hear her mother in the hallway. She could still remember the muffled voice, urgent and sharp. He doesn't deserve their love, Rachel had said into the phone. Maddie had paused her music that night, holding her breath. She'd wanted to believe it was about someone else, a colleague, an argument, but deep down, she'd known. She had written that line in the journal and circled it twice. Now, she sat cross-legged on her bed, the December cold trying to creep past the window panes, countered only by the glow of her bedside lamp and the soft rustling of worn sheets. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up with shaking fingers. Sophie's voice answered after one ring. Maddie? I knew, Maddie said, skipping any greeting. Her throat was tight, and I still blamed him. There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. Not judgment, just recognition. Sophie said, I think we all did. Maddie looked down at another entry. Mom's version always felt too clean. Too perfect. Beneath it. Why doesn't Dad fight back? She closed the journal gently. I'm going to see him, she said. The line crackled softly. Sophie replied, We'll be there soon. The drive to Michael's house felt shorter than it used to. She held the journal on her lap the entire way, fingers tense around the spine. When she arrived, Noah opened the door, stepping back wordlessly to let her in. Michael stood in the hallway. His eyes didn't widen, no flicker of surprise or tension. He just looked there. Present. Ready. I brought this, Maddie said, holding up the journal. She flipped it open, voice trembling. There's this page. Michael raised a hand gently. You don't need to read it, he said. You're here. That's enough. Rachel finds her home quieter than usual. No Maddie. No Noah. Sophie hasn't returned her messages. The morning frost traced delicate patterns across the kitchen windows, veins of ice glowing silver against the pale winter light. Rachel stood in silence, fingers curled around a lukewarm mug of coffee she hadn't touched. The house, once so full of footfalls, music, and voices, now pressed in with a kind of stillness that echoed. She had texted Sophie 3 times, called twice. Nothing. Maddie hadn't come home last night. Noah's bed was still made from the morning before. At least they still come home, she'd told herself in the past. That means they forgive me. But the rooms remained empty. Forgiveness, it seemed, was not an automatic inheritance. When the knock came, Rachel startled. She opened the door to find Sophie standing there, not angry, not weeping, just composed, purposeful. I didn't think you'd come, Rachel said, stepping aside. Sophie walked in but didn't sit. Her coat still clung to her shoulders. This isn't a visit, she said, looking Rachel in the eye. I came to say what I need to. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it again. She gestured toward the living room. But Sophie didn't move. I'll always love you, Sophie began. That's not up for debate. You're my mother. But trust doesn't rebuild itself. It doesn't come back just because you want it to. Rachel's knees bent slowly until she sat on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap like a child in trouble. Her voice cracked. I thought I was protecting you. Sophie didn't blink. You were protecting yourself. The words sat between them, heavy and final. Rachel looked down, tears slipping silently. There was no defense now. No illusion to uphold. Sophie reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. I wrote you something, she said. Read it when you're ready. She turned toward the door. Rachel rose, reaching halfway before her arms fell again. Sophie paused. You're still my mother, but you're no longer my mirror. She left. That night, miles away, Michael stood in the backyard. Snow hadn't come yet, but the air was brittle with cold. The letter Rachel wrote in 2020, creased, stained, marked with years of guilt, trembled in his gloved hand. Without a word, he fed it to the fire. The flames caught quickly, curling the paper into soft black flakes that drifted upward into the night. Elaine hands Michael a yellowed envelope. She gave this to me to hold. Just in case. They stood in the backyard garden, where the frost had settled like a veil across the dormant soil. Bare branches reached skyward in dark silhouettes. Twilight was falling, that cold blue hour between light and dark when everything felt half-remembered. Michael held the envelope in his gloved hands. It was brittle around the edges. The ink on the front softened by time. Just his name, nothing more. Elaine stood nearby, quiet. She said she almost mailed it. Elaine said gently, but she told me he wouldn't read it, so she gave it to me. Just in case. Michael nodded once. He broke the seal, unfolded the letter slowly. His eyes scanned the first line. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't live without asking for it. He stopped. The silence stretched. Elaine waited. Michael shook his head. It's not for me anymore. He said quietly. It's her burden now, not mine. He handed the letter to Lily, who had come out with a shawl draped over her shoulders. She said nothing, just held his gaze, then walked over to the metal fire bowl at the edge of the garden. Michael followed. Together, they lit a match. The flame touched the paper. It flared briefly, curling inwards, then settled into slow combustion. Words, emotions, regrets, all turned to ash. Behind them, Sophie stood near the fence. Watching, she stepped forward. Michael didn't speak. Sophie reached out and took his hand. They stood together in silence, the orange glow of the dying fire casting long shadows on the garden stones. The back door creaked. Noah appeared, holding something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a wooden frame. Inside was a photo, the old family picture. The one before everything broke, creased, but preserved. He looked up at Michael. Can we hang this? A new photo goes up in Michael's living room. Sophie, Maddie, Noah, Lily's daughter, and Michael, smiling. The winter sunlight slipped through the sheer curtains, soft and gold, spilling across the wooden floors. Outside, the world was wrapped in quiet white. Inside, warmth pulsed from the kitchen, mingling with faint laughter and the sound of a spoon clinking against a ceramic bowl. Michael stirred a pot of soup with quiet intention. Beside him, Noah set out plates, 4 wide-rimmed dishes and 2 smaller ones. His movements were measured, no longer unsure. I don't think she likes peas, Noah said, glancing toward the pot. Michael smirked. She'll survive. Lily entered with her daughter trailing behind her, cheeks rosy from the cold. The girl ran to the bookshelf and began arranging small figurines, humming to herself. Maddie arrived next, coat half-zipped, holding a covered tray. Pumpkin bars, she announced. Don't get too excited. They're from a box. They're still better than mine, Michael said. She paused, then stepped forward and hugged him. That's not a high bar. Sophie came last. She carried no food, no bag, just a quiet calm that filled the space before her. Elaine followed close behind, a wrapped rectangle in her arms. Before we eat, she said, I have something. They gathered in the living room. Elaine peeled back the wrapping slowly, revealing a photograph mounted behind glass. Sophie, Maddie, Noah, Lily's daughter nestled between them, smiling like she belonged. Michael at the center, his arm around Sophie's shoulder. Noah mid-laugh. It's time to start over, Elaine said. They stood in a hush. Noah took the frame, found a spot on the wall where the light hit just right. He passed the hammer to Sophie, who drove the nail gently into the plaster. Maddie stepped back, squinting. This one's staying, she said. There was no fanfare, no declarations, just the photo, now anchored, catching sunlight like it belonged. Dinner passed with small stories. Shared looks. Half jokes. No talk of Rachel. No talk of the past. When the doorbell rang, Michael wiped his hands on a towel and walked to the front door. He opened it. Rachel stood outside, her coat zipped high, hands tucked into her sleeves. She looked smaller somehow. Michael didn't say anything. He stepped outside and closed the door gently behind him. For years, silence had masqueraded as peace, but truth, once spoken, unraveled the lies that held them hostage. One by one, Michael's children chose to see, to question, and ultimately, to return, not to what was, but to what could be rebuilt. Justice didn't arrive in court or in rage, but in quiet reckonings and the courage to name what hurt. Like frost breaking under morning light, the weight of the past finally gave way, because no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.